Give
Hey,
a meeting or
Jason.
two.
All right.
A meeting or two for straggle or semi-drag.
I don't know if I should be like Secretary Fay and start saying, no, now we have seven, now we have 20, now we have 50. I don't know if we're gonna get that high, but we'll see. All right, we'll give it like another minute or two. It's at 6:32 right now, and then we'll call the meeting to order. I see Commissioner Handerhand in the audience. That's great, Commissioner. Welcome back. Vice Chair. Okay, it's 6:33 p.m. I'm going to call the first 2025 ZPD Committee Meeting to order again at 6:33 p.m. I just want to, as the agenda stated, I'd like to just welcome back some of the past and now occurring committee members. Joel Heisey, welcome back. We're very glad to have you from 1BO1. Mr. Jason Bello, also glad to have you back from 1BO1. We have Mr. Frank Chauvin from, welcome back, from 1BO2. We have Mr. Alex, I don't want to mispronounce, Caven Smith at 1BO2. We have Mr. Daniel Kramer, who's new. Sorry, so is Smith. Those two are new. I apologize. Again, these are little glitches. Nyan Hong, 1B03, is returning. Karen Gal, 1B05, is returning. Thank you again for your services. Mr. Christian Brandt is also returning from 1B06. And for the following new members, we have Alex Smith, 1B02. We have Daniel Kramer, 1B02. We have myself, 1B05. We have Miss Karen Brugman. I don't want to say it incorrect. I apologize. 1B06. We have Bruce Flippins, 1B08. Simon Handelman, 1B09, and of course, Patrick Nelson, who will be an advisor to me and the committee moving forward, is also back on live. So I just want to welcome all of you back, the past and the present, and I'm looking forward to a very productive year with zoning preservation and development. So with that being said, I'd like to start off with appointing a vice chair to the to this committee. It's going to be Christian Brandt. He will be the vice chair moving forward in this new term. Christian and I have already spoken. I'm looking forward to working with him, and I know that he does good work, and we're going to do good work together. So I know, Patrick, I'd like you to speak for a second. You had mentioned something was sent in. Frank, I see your hand up. Go ahead, Frank.
If we wouldn't mind, could you have Mr. Brandt introduce himself again and his background and what he currently does and how long he's been in the neighborhood? I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Um, Thank you, Commissioner Kensek. Hi, everybody. My name is Christian Brandt. And also, just to note, I'll figure out how to change this, but I do have a D in my name in case anybody is trying to find me. It is Brandt. Um, but I live on Chapin Street, so I live in Single Member District 6. I work professionally as an urban planner. Um, and I have been a member of this committee since June 2024. So it hasn't been quite a year yet. But I have a pretty long work history of managing and staffing planning related boards. I've never been on a board, but I have managed people like us many times. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
Yes. Okay. And just so you know, I see a comment about the introductions. Just to save some time, to be frank, I've watched through all the other commissioner meetings, and I found that the introductions tend to be 30 to 40 minutes long. And I think that right now, the information I've given to everyone so far in terms of their single member district, and I'm going to share everyone's email. We can always talk about the different individuals and introducing themselves. But for tonight's purposes, and with Mr. Calcutt waiting to speak, and Ms. Price, who I do want to get into speaking as well, I'd like to start with that. So, Jason, I appreciate the comment. Patrick, real quick, you had mentioned earlier that there was an agenda item about 1922 we were going to
Hey,
talk about right before.
Frank, Frank, I'm sorry, Alan.
Yes.
Just to correct you, you introduced everyone. Technically,
Yeah.
legally, you need to do a roll call.
Okay.
That's
Got
the
you.
first step. Second
Thank
step
you.
is, as far as the answer to the question for whoever asked that question about introduction, we can have Karen, we can get all that data off of the sheets that they send in and send an email around with little bios for everybody so that they have some idea of why they applied to be on this committee. Save us a little time. And the
That
answer to
sounds
the
great.
question was Frank sent an email about changing the item for 922 up. But as long as Steve Calcutt is willing to stay for a few more minutes with Amania to answer any questions that may come up from that, I don't think we need to move it because item 4 is a quick and easy thing that we'll move right past. So.
Okay. All right. So let's do a roll call. Joel Heisey,
Present.
Jason Bello,
Present.
Frank Chauvin,
Present.
Alex Smith,
Present.
Daniel Kramer, Daniel Kramer. Hey, Mr. Hong,
Present.
Miss Chairwoman Gal.
Present.
I myself am present, I think. Karen Brugman.
Present.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Mr. Christian Brandt,
Present.
Mr. Bruce Flippins. Hi. Simon Handelman,
Present.
present. Great. So we have a total of 12 people on this committee, not including myself, 11. Out of that amount, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 out of 11 present. We have a quorum. And I believe now, Patrick, we can start. All right. So according to the agenda, let's, if it's okay, we had discussed having Steve Calcutt and Amania Price off talking. And if someone can, I don't know who has their thing on not mute, but if you can mute yourself just so everyone can hear Steve and Miss Amania Price clearly, that'd be great. Steve, why don't you start off and be our nice guest that we're welcome to.
Okay, sure. Happy to. Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Calcutt. I'm the Deputy Preservation Officer for the city's Historic Preservation Office. And I'm here with Amania Price, who's a preservation planner who specializes in reviewing projects in the U Street Historic District. And in talking with Alan a little bit earlier, I guess last week, about this committee and what we do. He thought it would be helpful for us to come and introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about what the Historic Preservation Office does, how it's structured, and how we coordinate with ANCs and subcommittees of ANCs such as yours. So our office, as I say, is the Historic Preservation Office. It's a division of the Office of Planning. We serve as the staff to the Historic Preservation Review Board. The Review Board is an appointed body by the mayor of 9 members that meets on a monthly basis to do several things. They are the entity that designates properties, whether it's landmarks or historic districts. They are the policy-making body that advises the mayor on what are appropriate treatments, historic preservation treatments. And then they meet on a monthly basis to consider certain types of projects, both designation applications and larger projects, to hear those in a public meeting, hear from community organizations and ANCs, and then make determinations of whether or not a project is consistent with the Preservation Act in terms of being, in terms of preserving the historic property in question, that the alterations are generally compatible in character. And in doing that, they are relying on our staff, the Historic Preservation Office, which has about 10 or 12 project reviewers, to work with applicants in advance of those cases being presented to the Historic Preservation Review Board, identify what we think potential issues might be, design issues, planning issues, work with them to, and as well to ensure that there's adequate public notice of those cases, so that ANCs and community organizations have an opportunity to consider them and provide feedback to the HPRB. Applicants that go to the Historic Preservation Review Board are required to submit an application about a month in advance. We have a filing deadline each month that they have to submit their plans and an application to. We then provide them with what their notice requirements are, which is to put a placard on the property showing the public that this project has been submitted for historic preservation review. We upload their plans and applications to our website so that they're available to the public to see. We have a sort of a big global Dropbox that's organized by historic district. So you can go to project plans, go to U Street Historic District, and then they are listed chronologically. So the most recent filed cases will appear at the very top. So anything that's been filed for historic preservation review would then be available to the public. We then also provide notice, in addition to the applicant providing notice on the property. We provide notice by posting or sending out a public notice to all the advisory neighborhood commissions and anybody who's signed up to receive our mailings. We have about 3,400 people that you just go to the DC Gov website and you can click on whatever notices you want to receive. And so we provide that monthly notice to the public. That's only the notice. It's not an agenda. It's only just the things that have been submitted for potential review at the next available Historic Preservation Review Board meeting. Once word gets out that something has been submitted, hopefully the ANCs and committees like this will pay attention and see that they have stuff. There are cases pending. Imanya is also available to talk to you all about, what things might be submitted for review in an upcoming month, give you sort of an idea of what might be coming, and then once we've reviewed the cases internally, can give you an idea of what we think the preservation and design issues are. So we provide, our law requires that we provide 21 days of public notice for pending cases. We realize that that's not always adequate for ANCs. The ANC Act requires that we give 45 days notice to any case that the ANC requests the full 45 days of notice for. A lot of the cases that we received are pretty minor and don't really rise to the level of something that an ANC might be interested in. And so this sort of hybrid process of us providing notice to things, but then deferring anything that the ANC requests to be given the full 45 days of notice allows you all to make some decisions about, okay, this is kind of minor. It's a rear addition. It doesn't really affect anybody other than, maybe the immediate abutting property owners who have been notified. And so therefore, it's probably not something that needs to rise to the level of the full ANC. That's your decision to make, though. We will defer anything and everything that's on our public notice for the full 45 days because we have to give you all that full notice period. Um, After the notice has been met, whether it's the 21 days or the full 45 days at the request of the ANC, then we will schedule a case for hearing by the Historic Preservation Review Board. In doing that, we publish an agenda the week before the HPRB meeting. The board meets on the fourth Thursday of every month. The preceding Friday, so 5 days in advance of the meeting, we publish an agenda, a timed agenda. It has all the cases that the board is going to hear. It has links to the Dropbox account of all the project plans. We also publish staff reports. Our staff writes an evaluative report that summarizes what the case is about, what we think the preservation issues are, and we make a recommendation to the board whether we think it should be approved as submitted, approved with conditions, or not approved and requiring some rethought. So that's published, as I say, 5 days. Both the agenda and the staff reports are published 5 days in advance of the HPRB public meeting. Those are also the reports are posted in the Box account. Anyone, including ANC members or just anybody in the public, has the opportunity to testify, to sign up to testify, to speak at an HPRB meeting. The board meets by WebEx. They do not meet in person. But anybody that's interested can just email our main account and say, I want to testify on this case. Similarly, the ANC office can request that. Also, people can submit letters, ANC resolutions, all of which are also posted to the Dropbox so that not only the review board members can see them, but the public can see them as well. The board then meets on the fourth Thursday of each month. They typically spend about 45 minutes on a case. They hear from the applicant, they hear from the staff, they hear from the ANC if the ANC submitted something, and anybody that's signed up to testify. And then they deliberate openly, right then and there. If they can decide that they want to hold the case open. If, for instance, people are saying, oh, we need more information about this, they will ask the applicant to maybe provide a little bit more information and it'll come back in a month or so. They can take an action to approve. They can take an action to deny. So again, they deliberate openly. Unlike BZA and Zoning Commission, they don't issue written orders. But they do, our office issues board actions following the meeting that's posted on our website as well, so that the public can see, how the board acted on the applications. The video is also posted on the website. They're archived on the website, so if you're not able to watch the meeting live, people can go back and watch it after the fact. And see what the conversation was about and how the board arrived at whatever decision they made. The majority of cases that go to HPRB are concept applications rather than permit applications. This is something that's unique to the Historic Preservation Review process, in which prior to people having to prepare very elaborate and expensive construction plans, if they want to just ask some basic questions of like, can I build a 4-story building here, or can I only build a 3-story building here? Or, should this, addition, have these types of windows versus that. It's a way to get feedback from the review board without having to prepare, as I say, very elaborate construction plans for review by the Department of Buildings. People simply apply for a concept application to HPRB. And by their nature, concept plans cannot be completely definitive. Sometimes things are a little bit open-ended because they haven't been fully worked out yet. And so oftentimes our staff or ANCs or community groups will say, hey, we're okay with this general idea, but there's some things that need to be figured out still. And we want the opportunity to see that again, that this is, sufficiently vague still, that we want the opportunity to see it again. And the board then can consider that and decide whether or not to give it concept approval, but ask for final approval for the project to come back for a public meeting, or they will simply, if those concerns are not raised either by the staff or the community, the board can simply approve the case as a concept and delegate final construction authority, a construction plan approval, to the Historic Preservation Office staff. For larger cases, big new construction projects, a lot of the big projects that happened along 14th Street over the years, many of those came to the HPRB at least twice, once at sort of a general concept level, and then at a more refined level, a couple of months later after it had been further developed. Both times in which it would be anticipated that they would go before community groups to present, to show what the progress is, and respond to any of the comments that HPRB or the community has raised during that review cycle. For smaller projects, like a rear addition or a row house, just using that, assuming it's, there's nothing particularly extraordinary about it. That's the kind of thing that typically would go to the review board once at a concept level, and then final approval would be delegated to the staff. Finally, just to make it even a little bit more confusing, the HPRB's agenda is organized into two different types of cases. There are cases that are actually on the agenda in which there's going to be time set aside for the board to hear the case, and it's open for public deliberation or public comment and deliberation. They also have a consent calendar, though. So there's certain types of cases that are large enough to have to require being sent to the Historic Preservation Review Board, but there have been no issues that have been raised either by the Historic Preservation Office staff or the community that warrant the board spending 30 minutes hearing about the case. It's fine. We just write up a report saying this is fine. Again, we can put conditions in our report, and the board simply adopts those without holding a hearing. But again, consent calendar cases, by definition, are ones that everybody is sort of consenting to. If there are any objections received, it by definition is no longer a consent case and has to be put on the HPRB's agenda. The one thing that I didn't mention, which I probably should have done at the outset, is that only about 5 to 6% of the cases that are subject to historic preservation review go through this process at all. The vast majority of cases, as I say, about 93, 94%, are reviewed and approved by the Historic Preservation Office staff under delegation from the review board. The review board has enumerated about 28, 29 different types of work that our staff has the authority to approve on the board's behalf without going through the public notice process, without going through the ANC notification process. And this is just sort of the nuts and bolts kind of cases that most homeowners are pursuing, which is window and door replacements, repointing, roof replacement, even small additions that don't have a fundamental impact on the character of the property, up to about 500 square feet in size. So these are things that are often discussed in design guidelines that the board has adopted, that our office has written and the board has adopted, that are also on our website, and that if they meet the design standards that are established in those guidelines, then the staff has the ability to approve those projects on the board's behalf as consistent with the preservation law and not requiring this more extensive process, which is really intended to allow for public input on projects that will have a true public impact and the opportunity for the public to comment on those. So that's my what, 5 minute, 8 minute, 10 minute, sorry, went a little bit long, overview on the historic preservation process. Imanya is our staff, as I said, is our staff contact for the U Street Historic District. She's been doing that for a number of years. She knows many of you, I know, as do I, and knows the warp and weft of the neighborhood very well. She's the point of contact that I would encourage people to go to if they have questions about what a home renovation on their own property, or comments or concerns about something that might be pending for review or that's under construction, questions about whether or not they're following the approved plans. We do have 3 building inspectors who can stop a job if it's deemed not consistent with the approved plans, and so we send them out. They're pretty strongly complaint driven. We really appreciate having the eyes and ears of community members who are aware of what has gone through the preservation review process. And ideally with this committee, knowing somewhat what the standards are, and what you all have seen. And if you all see things that you have questions about whether or not they're consistent with what was approved, by all means, let us know about those and we can dispatch somebody to take a formal look at it. So I've talked enough. Imanya, are you on there? I don't see you.
Well, I think
Yes,
before.
I'm down here at the bottom, but
Oh, there you
just real
are.
quick, how are you? My name is Imania Price, as Steve Kalka said. I am your U Street Historic District Reviewer. You are welcome to reach out to me with questions on different properties. I'm here to help. Yeah, I'll let you guys come back with some questions.
Well, first off, thank you, Mr. Calcutt and Ms. Price. Steve, you've been great to deal with, just working with me and being able to take the call and say no problem, and also giving us your time and explaining this out. I think that's a really good way to start off 2025. So I appreciate that. I'd like to open the floor to the committee. I see Mr. Showman's hand raised. Frank, if you'd like to, go ahead and speak.
Yes, thank you, Steve and Amanya, for being here. Steve, I am long overdue on hearing that presentation, so I'm sure everybody on the call, most folks on the call who don't do this daily, appreciate it deeply. I have a question on the delegation of the 28 or 29 different types of work that's been delegated to staff. Is that list on the website? Or is that?
It's
Okay.
within the board's regulations.
Okay.
And if you go to our website and you click on regulations, it's chapter 3, section 321. It's a long list of delegated sort of categories of work.
All right. Thank you for that. My second question is, can you tell me when HPO, your office, receives an application? Is there an email list I can be notified that an application has been received? This is sort of I think, a missing piece for my neighborhood, my neighbors. We see something that all of a sudden ends up on the consent calendar and has a staff approval. So I'd like to be able to intervene so that I know that is an application and I can start to ask questions, especially if it's in a sensitive area or an area we're watchful of or we're having problems with. And so is there an email application availability, an email publication that I can subscribe to see all applications submitted to your office?
Not for all building permit applications, no. Only the cases that have been filed for the Historic Preservation Review Board.
Yeah. So to clarify, again, I'm asking for applications received by HPO. You're saying no.
Well, again, so for anything that's scheduled to go to the Historic Preservation Review Board, whether it's on the consent calendar or on the agenda, anything that's been what we call filed for HPRB review, that's what we submit. That's what we publish a notice on a monthly basis. That goes to anybody who has signed up to receive our mailings and it should go to all ANC commissioners. We every year we sort of send it to we scrub our list and try and update and get all the ANC commissioners. We also send it to the ANC offices. But for the thousands of building permit applications, like, somebody who just wants to replace their windows, we only receive those applications from the Department of Buildings. They're submitted to us through the Project Docs web portal, which is the tracking system that DOB uses for building permits. They get assigned to our office. Imanya would go in for any of the projects in the U Street Historic District, would review and make sure that the plans are sufficient, but she would approve that, and that would not be, we don't have a global list of those, and we don't have a way to provide notice on those.
All right, so I will ask one more related question, but then I'm going to put my name back in to come back around after others have had the ability for some questions. But I'm going to ask again. So we have an item on the agenda tonight that is very upsetting to neighbors, that it was approved and there was no notice given regarding the application of and to be able to comment on. And it has to do with a lean-to looking structure being allowed, a lean-to looking structure, barnish, that folks don't believe is adhering to historic standards. I don't think you want a barn in your backyard. I want U Street to be treated the same as Georgetown. And maybe they have some specific standards. I want standards applied. I don't want a barn in my neighbor's backyard. I don't want a lean-to in my neighbor's backyard. And so I'm trying to understand how to be part of the discussion and process so that we don't have to drop the ball again and can partake in a discussion so that when there's an addition, maybe that's a standard we can be exposed to on a list or be apprised of. Maybe that's the standard. I'm not sure. With all the 28 items, I don't know. Maybe there's a list we'd like to see, but is there some way to work through this? If you understand my question here.
Well, Frank, there was quite a few parts to that question. So, Mr. Colcott, give your best you can do. I appreciate it.
And I'm perfectly happy with being called Steve from here on out. Please, first name is great for me. I don't know the specific case you're referring to, so I can't speak to it. And so therefore I can't really speak as to why we thought it was compatible or not to approve at the staff level. But I don't know how we want to delve into that. If you want to send us
It's
specifics about
1922 that Manya's
well, that
quite
hasn't been
familiar
approved.
with.
That hasn't been approved.
But we caught it on the consent agenda, and if I hadn't been looking, it would have passed through.
Correct. Right. But again, that's the point of the public notice process, is that case was big enough, it was a big enough addition to where it required going to the Historic Preservation Review Board. We have written a report in which we have stated why we believe it is reasonably compatible for the historic district. You all saw it, objected to it being on the consent calendar. We took it off, and it will go back, and we took it off again this month. But when that goes to the Historic Preservation Review Board, it's going to be on the agenda. So you and anyone else will have the opportunity to tell the review board why you think that is not a compatible addition.
All right. Thank
Steve,
you.
can I? Oh, sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Steve. Next up is Mr. Jason Bello.
Yeah, maybe one question to follow up on Frank's and then a couple of my own. I think, just practically speaking, what we find is when a staff report has been written, it is near impossible for the community to get the board to see otherwise. It is, and when the applicant has the opportunity to engage with the staff prior to the report being written, but the ANC does not have the opportunity to engage with the staff prior to the report being written, it has the potential of biasing the staff report in favor of the applicant, which makes it very difficult for the board to give the ANC the same great weight that is given the applicant. And so I personally think it would be very helpful to establish kind of a more standardized order of procedures in terms of, first of all, it'd be very helpful to have some way of sorting those applications that are coming for either for the board's review, either consent calendar or board discussion by ANC, so that we can see them easily when they come out. I think that would be extremely helpful if there was a way to do that. And then we can just sign up and look for ANC 1B and see the.
Yeah. Do you receive our notice currently?
I don't.
Okay.
Um,
It's actually organized by historic district as
Right,
opposed
which is
to
not
ANC.
right.
We list the ANC on there. A lot of communities think about their historic district as an entity
Right.
as opposed to the ANC. But I think the key here is everyone's got to read our notice.
Yeah.
We do have the opportunity to engage with us before our staff report, but it requires you all to be looking at our public notice that we publish before we put out the agenda, before we prepare our staff reports, put it out at the beginning of the month. And again, anything that you all have concerns about or need more
Mhm.
time on, just let us know.
Yeah, for sure. But
And so
yeah,
that I think is maybe what the missing piece is here is either you're not getting our notices or the office isn't flagging them for you or we're not organizing them properly or whatever. But the whole purpose of providing that notice is early identification of what are the cases that we potentially care about versus what are the cases that we don't.
right.
That's why we also publish all of the plans on the website so that the commissioners can go and look at the plans and see what's been submitted, same thing that we're seeing, and make a decision. Oh, okay, this is actually really minor, or this doesn't raise any issues. Again, you can still ask for more time so that you all can collectively come to that conclusion. But the publishing of our agenda should not be the first time that you all are being made aware of a case.
Yeah, it generally is.
Publishing
So I think
of the notice.
yeah. I mean, we should figure. I mean, first of all, like, I mean, for example, this ANC covers multiple
Jason,
historic districts.
can I interrupt for just 1 second, just to clarify something with Steve? The real issue, Steve, Jason's making a valid point, but you're also making a clearer delineation of how this is being done. And speaking from my own personal experience in being affiliated with this committee for over almost 10 years, the real issue is that unless Jason himself goes on and signs up for those notices, the notice that you guys send to the ANC goes to a lockbox kind of thing. And in the past, from my experiences, that box was never monitored enough for that information to be passed on. I personally had to go and find out all those. That's how we got the cases that we dealt with on the committee level and were able to weigh in. Now that you're saying, which I think is kind of new in the sense of information for the committee here, that anyone on this committee can go and sign up to get those notices aside from the ANC. That'll be a huge delineation of data being brought in, because in the past it's been just from the notice that comes out, and at that point the 45 days is already, like you said, it's 20 days already had kicked in. You lost 20 days, and then you put out the notice, and it's a week before the meeting. So I think that's important. What Jason was asking for is really what I think you're saying, that he should, I'm not telling him, but he should, as a committee member, be able to sign up and get any of those notices sent to him.
If we can get instructions circulated, that would be great. And then,
if you just go to Alert DC, Alert DC has a process by which you can sign up, and you can get them for the alcohol beverage control board. You can get them for zoning. For anything that you're interested in, you can get notices of the various offices that are processing cases.
But it also would be very helpful to, in future notices, if possible, to add a way of sorting them by ANC. because our ANC does not line up against historic district boundaries.
Okay, I'll take that back.
Thank you. And it would be great to sort of establish, I think it's fair, and I'll let the chairperson speak, but I think it's fair to assume generally that anything that goes before the board itself for discussion, the ANC certainly wants to weigh in on, and the ANC would want the opportunity to reflect on cases that are going to consent calendar. And so I think, and frankly, I mean, like, I just want to be direct. We have a lot of shady developers that try to circumvent the community engagement process. And so appreciate the help of the staff in just, you know, if you happen to see something that's going to go before the board and you haven't heard from the ANC, you know, it's a little like, it would be a little suspect in my view. Like, we'll try to catch them too, but I think it's helpful for you to know that we want to be very engaged as 1B, and we do want to weigh in on those cases that are going to go to the board for discussion, and that goes for both U Street and for LaDroit Park. I have two other thoughts, comments. One is we do struggle with enforcement. And so it would be great to get some additional support on enforcement. Usually I actually say enforcement pre-construction or during construction is quite good. Enforcement once something has been done is really been quite poor. I give you one example. We have a house in LaDroit Park that has constructed a shed in the front yard with no review whatsoever. It's obviously illegal. It's obviously not compatible with the historic district. The HPRB has been aware of it, or the HPO has been aware of it for over 6 months, and nothing has happened. We've had illegal fences, we've had all sorts of things, and I don't think any one of them has had enforcement. So would like to know what HPO is doing to support enforcement on construction that has been completed.
Yeah, that'll have to be a separate presentation because the enforcement process in DC is, I don't think it's a very effective program in DC, to be honest. I'm probably not supposed to be saying that as just a government employee, but the enforcement process is very, very cumbersome. It is incredibly slow, and I'm not talking about our performance in it. I'm talking about the process, the way it's been set up, that we have to work with legally. I know about the shed. I don't know the address specifically, and so but if you want to send me an email address or send me an email with that, I can find out what the status of the enforcement is. Just because you're not seeing anything happening doesn't mean that nothing is happening. It's just that 6 months is like, nothing in the world of enforcement. It's sadly.
Okay, thank you. And then my last comment is I do want to say, I just want to let you know that there is a perception amongst many in our community, and committee members Chauvin referred to it, that our neighborhoods, which tend to be lower income and majority minority neighborhoods, get a lighter degree of scrutiny when it comes to historic preservation than neighborhoods like Georgetown or Upper Northwest. And I just want, you may say that's not true, and I fully appreciate that, but I just want to say that, like, we really, the importance of historic preservation in our community is great. We have a lot of history, including a lot of DC history and a lot of Black history that needs to be preserved. And we appreciate the same degree of scrutiny that's placed in these wealthier and wider neighborhoods in our communities as well.
Well said. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. I appreciate you answering the question, Steve. I want to turn to the audience. We have a Miss Arlene Fiskenage who has her hand raised. Arlene, I want to allow you to talk, so you can unmute yourself and talk.
Okay, thank you. Steve, I just wanted to clarify, the Historic Preservation Office, does it only concentrate on buildings or structures, or does it would it also include like an area, a neighborhood? And I'm specifically thinking about the 1617 U Street project that will be coming up, where the police and fire station are right now. I mean, those I don't think are historic buildings. They may very well be torn down, but the area that they're in is a historic district. So I was wondering if the HPO would be weighing in on that type of project. Is that under your purview as well?
Yeah, so the board can designate both individual buildings, landmark buildings, but more commonly, most of the review goes on for broader neighborhoods, historic districts. So DuPont Circle, LaDroit Park, U Street, all those are broader historic districts that are made up of hundreds or even thousands of what are called contributing. They contribute to the historic character of those neighborhoods, historic districts. 1617 does not have any, the redevelopment site itself
Right.
does not have any designated historic buildings on it. All of that is sort of 1960s, 70s. The police station, the fire station. And so it can be demolished as a matter of right. Interestingly, that site also falls with a little bit of a donut hole in which it is surrounded by historic districts, but it is not in any historic district. The Stryver Section Historic District is to the north and to the east. The 16th Street Historic, I'm sorry, to the west. The 16th Street Historic District is to the east, and I guess Stryver's is also to the south. However, because this is a DC government project, or DC government will be a sponsor of that project, there is a provision in the preservation law that the Historic Preservation Office is given the authority to review projects that have potential impacts on surrounding historic properties. So we will be reviewing that project for general compatibility with the surrounding neighborhoods.
Good. Okay.
And so there will be a review of that, and that was also captured a little bit in the zoning commission's order about how they zoned that site, which has some required step downs of height immediately abutting some of the lower scaled neighborhoods around it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm glad to hear that you'll be reviewing the concept, I guess, and then the final plans, because it sounded as if it was going to be a massive building amongst these low-rise.
Don't get me wrong. It's going to be a massive building. It's still going to be a very large new building.
How does that fit into a historic neighborhood?
Right.
Like
And we do not have the authority to downzone it through historic preservation design review. So we have the opportunity to comment on it. It's not a regulatory review. It is an advisory review in which we will have the opportunity to comment on it and make suggestions for improving its or evaluating, and if need be, improving its relationship with surrounding historic properties.
Okay. And that would be the design, basically, you're saying.
Correct. Right.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Viscanich. I'm going to ask now, Frank, I see that you have your hand up, but Alex Smith has not spoke yet. So Alex, if you want to go on with your question, and then we'll go back to Frank, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, I think my question's pretty quick. Steve, thanks so much for coming and sharing. I just went on Alert DC to try and sign up for like the HPO alerts, and I can't figure it out. I'm wondering, and I don't think I'm the least tech savvy person, but it feels like a classic bureaucratic government website that's kind of hard to navigate. And so I'm wondering if we could get a little help in terms of getting signed up for those notices.
I have not done it myself in quite a while, but my memory was that you could scroll through, and it would actually be Historic Preservation Review Board rather than Historic Preservation Office. And there's just a whole list of boards and commissions mailing lists that you could sign up for.
Hey, Steve, if it's all right with you, what I like to do is we can maybe have you do some cliff notes between you and Amanya, and I'll get those out in the minutes to go through the steps to make it easier for the people on the call and anyone that's interested, just to make the process a little easier. And that'll give you a couple days if that's all right with you. We have another follow-up question, and thank you very much for that, Alex. We have another question now from Mr. Frank Chauvin. Frank, you're on.
Yes, Steve, I'm gonna ask a question and then I'm gonna follow up with a statement about the violation process, uh, the violation process. But first, so how can it be appropriate? And I'm doing my own research that the staff, you folks, sign off on a lean-to, on a barn structure on the back of 1922 9th Street. Um, I don't know what the full standard is, and I don't have all the colloquial language and the practices of what is historically compatible. But when you're sitting on 9.5 Street behind 1922 9th Street, they share a backyard. There's historic row homes that look historic. You walk around them, they look historic. They aren't in no way look like a barn, in no way look like a lean-to. How can we allow for, under what standard is a lean-to or a barn looking structure in the diagram that is in your Dropbox folder for 1922 9th Street, for public to review? Anybody on this call can review it. It's a barn. And so how can that be compatible with the historic standards set on U Street, on UC Historic District? Can you explain this a little? Because I have a deep problem with it, and the neighbors have a deep problem with it, and such belittled use, because this barn, and I'm calling a barn structure view, a lean-to view, is a belittled use that shows nobody cares about this area. It offers nothing.
Frank, excuse
Okay.
me, Frank. I appreciate it. You mentioned several times it looks like a barn. We got it.
Yep.
Let's Steve.
And Alan, I hear you. Thank you. And I'll follow up with one other question after that. Thank you.
Okay, couldn't you let Steve answer the question? Because going on, we heard it's a barn. We got it. I think Steve, you got it's a barn shape. Doesn't match the neighborhood.
Sure, we hear you, Alan. Thank you.
Imanya is more familiar with the specifics of this design, but my memory is that it's a two-story addition on a two-story row house, and I don't know exactly what the barn references to. Is it that it's covered in it's clad in siding as opposed to brick?
It's clad in siding. It has one window way up in the top left-hand corner. It has one little door in the center of the back side. And the treatments on the side of it, not the rear view, but on the side of it are pretty diminutive. I don't know if it even has any windows. So
Your objection to it is lack of fenestration, that it feels too enclosed.
it just looks like a shed. So it looks like a shed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So your preference would be for more openings.
More openings and
Yeah.
more historical treatments.
It's interesting because I think in our conversations with you and many others in the community about this block, there have been so many concerns about uses and noise, and control of activities that goes on in those buildings in the nighttime hours. I think we thought that fewer openings in this particular instance might actually be better for limiting the amount of noise and impacts on surrounding properties. But I appreciate that someone could purely for, I mean, the board has typically, particularly for the rears of properties that have long been in commercial use and that face onto commercial alleys, has generally been pretty lenient in terms of design standards. If you look at the backs of buildings along Barracks Row and Capitol Hill, for instance, it's loading docks, it's concrete block additions, it's a lot of very solid sort of thing. Same thing, 18th Street in Adams Morgan, that oftentimes the back of commercial properties are given a wider berth, because that's also sort of the condition that many of them were in at the time of designation. As we at the time the neighborhood was designated, these commercial areas had a variety of very non-historic conditions on the backs of commercial properties, and that wasn't the impetus of the community seeking historic designation was to, preserve the backs of the commercial properties. It was a little bit broader than that. So that has been an area that I think that our office and the review board has generally been very flexible on in multiple historic districts. But again, if one can certainly take exception to that and ask for something different.
Well, thank you, Steve. And I just have to say, I appreciate your idea of filling in for the deficiency of the building code. All right. But your lack of fenestrations are just an ode to filling in for the building code that is substantially deficient when there is no sound code, no requirements for sound mitigation in these establishments. So I appreciate your nod. However, building code deficient deeply and very affecting in several of the folks on this call who have to deal with it, and it's not being dealt with. So that's an aside. And one last comment. I will touch on, if you would, the issue of violations, remediation. You are correct. This city and your DOB and HPO are very deficient on violations. All right, we have a sign on 9th Street that's been in violation for a year. You remember we talked about this a year ago, December. It's still there.
We still have a pending case trying to get rid of that sign.
Right. Well, but
we ultimately do not have the authority to get rid of the sign ourselves. We submit cases to the Office of the Office of Administrative Hearings, and they can take a very long time to schedule a case, to close out a case, to take action on a case. It is very frustrating.
Yeah, and I just wanted to give you the background of that deficiency. There are 5,000 cases in backlog by DOB at the Office of Administrative Hearings. 5,000. Okay, it's a clown show. It's like nobody's watching over this shop, and it's very frustrating as someone who lives near this and has to deal with this on a day in and day out basis, that someone hasn't turned this OA Office of Administrative Hearings around and given them the resources they need. Because my sign case is one of 5,000 cases that's in some backlog. Is that a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, or 4 year backlog? I don't know, but I just wanted to bring that point around to support of your position that it's broken. But thank you for your time tonight, and I appreciate your expertise and your long tenure in the corridor and always being helpful to me over the decades. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate it. And also thank you again, Steve, for responding. Next up is Simon, also committee member.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for welcoming me to this committee. This is my first time engaging in a neighborhood community process like this, and it's been extremely interesting so far. I've been looking at these plans, and I've been listening to everything that's been going on, and I think I have just sort of a couple general questions. I keep hearing the phrase like historic character, I think, thrown around, and I was just wondering if we had like a concrete definition of what's considered to be historic. And I was also wondering about like this sign issue and kind of a bunch of other things. And then I think it's interesting to me with this idea of like this big backlog, because myself, I actually work in one of the restaurants on 18th Street. And I've been living in the neighborhoods in this area for the past 6 years, but like just I'm kind of curious about like what I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Being on this panel, seeing the things that that people would would feel the need to file a request. Maybe I'm using the wrong terminology. I'm still learning. I apologize, but people would feel the need to file like a request or a complaint about something being in violation. I'm curious about like what would it be violating? What are the issues? And what is the frequency that we're filing these requests that there's such a backlog? Not to put it on the residents of the area, but you know, when we're moving through a cosmopolitan city, there's a need for businesses, there's a need for housing, and maybe they don't all have the most elegant cornices around the windows, but at the end of the day, you know, I've been reviewing these plans and it seems like they're trying to expand their business. And as a member of the community, I think that they should be empowered to do that.
I can take on, I think, what was a general question of guidelines for historic character for U Street. The thing about historic districts that is pretty unique is that for contributing buildings, you know, there is distinct characteristics for each historic building. So a lot of times there is not just the standard turrets are historic, or because a historic building may not have a turret. So you know, a historic door might be appropriate on a 1880s building, but not a 1930s building. So there is very specific details when it comes to understanding what a historic character represents for your block, for your row, and ultimately for your historic district. So that's a lot. Okay, go ahead. So for our office, what our goal is to help provide some guidance when an applicant does come in. And honestly, the thing about U Street that is a bit unique than others is your development. You are rapidly developing, and you also have a lot of businesses coming in, so you have a lot of turnover. So I talk about signs a lot because I have have applicants and tenants constantly coming in to a historic district, not realizing they're in a historic district and they need to get a permit. And how do you get a permit? Oh, you're DOB, you're not a PO. And so I'm constantly educating not only tenants, but property owners who are not on site at all. And so they're not even understanding there is a process. And so what I do think would be helpful for everyone would be to kind of highlight the brand of historic districts. A lot of times people or owners might forget because there's no community push that this is a historic area and that we have a standard. Historic Preservation Office, we have a standard, but those standards are, we have a standards for federal, so they're kind of broad. Then they kind of start narrowing down as we get into our guidances, but those are also guidances. And so it's when the ANCs have kind of a stricter kind of commitment to their historic district that allows us to have a bit more stringent conditions for when a tenant comes. And so when a tenant comes for a sign, I could say, you know, this ANC really would like for signs to come to their committee. And so I'll send signs to your specific committee. But remember, I get ANC 1B, I get ANC 8A, I get ANC. So I'm not always quite sure what ANC is particularly, interested in what specific issue with their historic district. And so having conversations like these is important for us to kind of come around to throughout the quarters. And so we can address certain concerns that you might be rising. And while we might not be able to have the authority to do things like tear down signs, which I agree have been atrocious and have been a problem, but at least we can have a concerted effort for signage coming in or people coming in so that I can provide additional resources for them. So that would be kind of my long standing of everything, all of the characters can be historic. There are different ways to interpret that. And our office is here to help you kind of guide you through that those character defining features.
Amanya, much appreciated, and your child is learning a lot as well. So we appreciate you taking the time. I know it's late. Now we have a couple hands raised. Alex, I'm going
I
to
have
let you. I know, Karen. Alex was just a question about getting the logistics of the sign on. So I'm going to let Alex go, and then Karen, you'll follow up next. Alex, go ahead.
Sure. Oh yeah, mine was not about the sign, but I had a quick question about Steve mentioning like when a building backs up to a commercial alley, the standards are like perhaps a little less stringent. I think I know the one that's being referenced in this case, 1922 9th Street backs up. 9th Street is a commercial corridor, but it itself backs up to straight up to residential homes, not to an alley. So I'm wondering, does that kind of raise the standard a little bit when HPO or is reviewing it?
I mean, in our evaluation of it, I mean, we certainly know about 9.5 Street, and we've worked on multiple redevelopments on that block. We are considering primarily what the public impact of projects are, and so things like visibility from a public street or way is one of the primary considerations that the review board applies. It's not to say that things that are not visible from a street aren't subject to review, but things that are not visible from a street tend to have less of a broader public impact. And so that has been a determinant for the review board in giving greater flexibility for things that have less public impact. It's not to say they have no public impact, but so and it's not sort of a binary yes no sort of thing. It's looking at the particular project and the particular site plan and the particular impact that it would have. Just because something is visible from a street doesn't inherently make it incompatible either. We see lots of things and they're perfectly fine and they're compatible. But I think in this particular instance, we thought, given the built-out nature of 9.5 Street, that yes, from the backs of those properties, you would see the back of this property, but from a street itself, it had very limited visibility. So that was part of the consideration.
Thank you very much, Alex. Chairwoman Gal, please.
Good evening. Manya, how are you doing? Manya Price. I have a question specifically. We have a lot of Wardman style apartment buildings slash they've turned into condos in our area. And as you mentioned, there's a significant amount of people who come into the area who are not from the area, who have purchased these locations, and they've cut down like historic trees, like cherry trees that we've had in the area, because and they've also, like, we have one location where they've left the house, they basically semi gutted the house, but they want it to deteriorate in some type of way, and it's messing up the structure. It's been open like this for over, I want to say, over 5 to 6 years, right, Alan? That one with the gaping windows open, with the boards just completely open. And I'm just curious as to how often do you all check the inventory of the historic homes and locations, specifically, and because this is a Wardman property, architecture property, um, how often do you all go through and check your actual inventory? And especially inventory, even if it's owned by someone who's supposed to be working on a project, who's abandoned the project, do you try to get the city to acquire those projects, or do you to what degree do you do enforcement when it comes to something like that? when it's been reported that it's been a neglected, abandoned, or whatever project, or if the owner is trying to intentionally deteriorate the building so that they can subvert the whole historic preservation process. I'm just curious as to what's the process there. Is that a question that you hear often too?
Steve, you want to take the neglect question, and I'll take the other portion.
So neglected properties, properties that are not meeting property maintenance standards, can be reported to the Department of Buildings. They have an illegal inspections branch, but they also have a branch that's devoted to property maintenance. And so if a property is not being maintained according to the construction code, it can be reported. DOB does take the lead on those. We do not on neglect cases. They coordinate with us on those, but they have the sort of unique authority in the district to go after neglect. We can go after unpermitted construction or deviations from permitted construction, but our legal authority is restricted to that as opposed to property maintenance issues.
And that means okay, so that means if someone stops the construction in midstream and never returns, do you guys consider that to be neglected?
That is an endemic problem in DC, that uh, DB honestly does not have a terribly satisfying answer to that. I think their position is that if there is a building permit that's issued and is kept alive by construction, kept valid, failure to act in what most of us would consider a timely fashion is not considered a building code violation. Once a permit is expired, there's also not a requirement that people complete the work. However, they do have to leave the building in a safe and boarded up condition. But there is not a requirement that once somebody gets a building permit that they have to actually act on the permit. And so they can start construction, and then they can stop construction. And as long as they are keeping the property boarded up and not an open nuisance, that is not considered that is not a building code violation, according to their reading of the construction code.
And the second portion, if the of the question
I'm very busy.
was someone had they cut down the historical trees in front of their building. And again, this place has been completely abandoned for construction, but they cut down 100-year-old tree. That was part of the question that I had asked.
I can't.
I'm
Yeah,
assuming
I'm
that
sorry. I
Ms.
cannot.
Price was going to ask.
I can't right now. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Miss. I'm
I'm
assuming.
sorry, man. I just can't be the. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm sorry, Daniel.
Daniel, you need to mute yourself. You're talking over the.
I just muted him. Continue, Karen. We got the trees.
Yeah.
We got
Okay.
the area.
Yeah, there's specifically a Wardman property that had
Yeah.
been like this gate. They left the windows are completely open. It hasn't been boarded for 6 years. I'm assuming that there's intentional neglect, that they want to destroy that building because of the historical preservation status. And I don't know how you all go about enforcing it, but also next to their property, they cut down 100-year-old cherry blossom tree. And it's just like incredible. As Jason had mentioned earlier, there's a consistency where these buildings in these areas, but people, I'm assuming that just because it's in certain areas that are not often considered Georgetown adjacent or whatever, they tend to be neglected in regards to enforcement. And so that's the type of stuff that we're looking at in some of these areas in our community?
Yeah, so trees are actually not something that we have any regulatory control over. Trees are regulated to a certain extent by the city's tree ordinance, which is administered by the Office of the Urban Forester. There's a permitting process by which trees can be removed. Some types of trees cannot be removed. That's not something that our office administers, and so questions about that would need to be directed to the Office of the Urban Forester, and they do have a website that you can look at and see the types of trees that are protected, and they're categorized not just in terms of species but also just in terms of size. So anyway, that's not something that I know a tremendous amount about. Um, for a property that has had open windows for 6 years, if you want to send me the address of the property, I can forward it once again to the Department of Buildings and see if it's on their radar screen. I assume it would be, but having windows boarded up is like one of the most fundamental things to securing a property that I'm surprised that windows have been unboarded up for so long and that no action has been taken. But I can certainly pass that address along to DOB to see if it's on their radar, and if not, to bring it to their attention.
I appreciate it. I'll have my ANC make sure that he does that
Okay.
as this call is over. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Steve. We have two more hands up. The next one is Frank Chauvin.
Yes, Steve, to jump topics a hair, you and I and Amanya maybe a year and a half ago chatted about historic standards, and there is none for U Street. And about 10 years ago, I guess you started to implement standards when new communities were coming online and designated as a historic district. Am I correct in that iteration?
Correct.
Um, can you tell me? I know recently the HPRB has been reviewing for some substantial time Anacostia historic district standards. Can you tell me, do you think why we are currently missing them? Can you help in getting U Street historic standards? What would we need to do? And I mean, my interest probably would be taking small steps such as signs. I don't know if we could start there. Again, I'm not
Well,
speaking.
signs are one of the few things that we do have citywide standards for, and those have been in place for 15 years or so. We do have, those are applied across the city. However, the sign regulations do acknowledge that there are differences in neighborhoods, different neighborhood types, different building types within neighborhoods. So there is some applicability to the neighborhood that takes into account its particular character. But in terms of historic district guidelines, you were correct. 10 or 15 years ago, when historic district applications started coming in, we decided it was best practice to develop design guidelines to explain to people, because there were all these questions of, well, what are the impacts on me? What does it actually mean? And that written design guidelines would be helpful. And ever since then, when new historic districts come online, we developed design guidelines for the board to consider at the same time that they're considering an historic district application. We have not gone back and developed guidelines for the preceding 45 years worth of historic districts that were created, the majority of them. And I'm simply because of time, we don't have the staff to do it. I'm also not sure that we would, if we had to do design guidelines for sort of every historic district, I don't think that we would do them by historic district. I think we would recognize broader neighborhood types. And acknowledging that there's some variety amongst them, but when you're talking about the neighborhoods like U Street that developed largely between the end of the Civil War to the 1920s, That history is common throughout multiple historic districts, and the building types have a lot of commonality to them. So I think we would probably develop a design guideline that would be more for sort of whatever we would call that type of neighborhood, or that those resource types, or we call them row house neighborhoods, if you will. But again, it's simply that we have not had the time and staff to do them, and we focused instead on updating some of the existing guidelines that we have, uh, and then developing and then relying on the citywide standards that we have for windows and doors and utility meters and basement areaways and signs and storefronts and that sort of thing, which apply to, I think, all of these neighborhoods, including U Street.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Frank. Jason, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks so much for all the time you've spent. This has been sort of a unique opportunity for us to reflect with you. This is, and apologies, this is more of a comment than a question, but I joined the committee originally after a property in my neighborhood I felt like was not getting the appropriate historic preservation attention. This was 421 T Street Northwest, which you may remember was a pretty controversial one. Um, and At the time, HPO, one of the rationales that HPO had for permitting something that the board or recommending the board approve something that was ultimately deemed incompatible by the board was expediency, namely that it was an abandoned building, and that by doing something, we had a greater chance of preserving what was actually one of the essential McGill houses in LaDroit Park, than if this addition, which admittedly was not perfect from historic compatibility, was not approved. Unfortunately, that building is now abandoned. The construction has moved to a standstill, and it seems that the developer has paused or run out of money or whatever. I don't know the exact details, but construction has stopped on that. I also believe that if the Historic Preservation Office and the review board had engaged more with the community and scaled back some of that project, it would have been done much quicker. The battles around it would not have been as protracted, and it actually would have had a greater chance of being completed. And so I just want to reflect on that I think, in some cases, folks see the community engagement process as slowing things down. I actually think if the community had been better engaged with earlier on that project, there would have been a better chance of that building being preserved. Whereas right now it's kind of left abandoned.
Thanks, Jason, for the comment. I appreciate it. Is there anyone else that needs or would like to ask a question, or can we allow Steve and Miss Amanya to get off the call? I think you guys are free. I don't know. I hope that you guys want to come back. We really appreciate you guys so much spending your time with us tonight, and definitely look forward to moving our communication forward, and making sure the entire committee is up here to anything that's going on in our areas. So thank you both again for your time, and we will definitely see you guys soon. Thank you very
No
much.
problem. Feel free to reach out. Thank
Thanks
you.
very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item that's on, we wanted to actually talk about the horrific accident that took place at 1100 block at 1111 B Street. And we did reach out to DOB. I did get a final answer last night, basically saying that no one from DOB. I talked to Mr. Cox, and him and some other people were available. They said they will make themselves available next month, but I don't want us to hold our breath, because they also said in our commissioner meeting in 1B 2 weeks ago that they would make this meeting. So I'll get on top of them for our next meeting to be a part of it, to get more into discussion. But for those that are on the call that might have any questions or anything they would like to discuss, by all means, here's your chance to ask, and we'll do our best to answer. Not seeing any.
I have
So
a question. Sorry, I
yeah,
should have raised my hand. There we go. I guess I wasn't able to come to the ANC's most recent meeting because I was sick. And so I'm just wondering like what the counselor's office has like if they have said anything with regard to the ongoing problems with DOB. I don't want to like rehash all of the things that we talked about at the ANC meeting because there was some very passionate testimony there. But it seems like this is kind of like an endemic problem, and we just heard many references to DOB and their process, and it seems like they're complicating things for HPO as well. So I guess I'm just wondering, has anyone from the ANC, any commissioner, been in touch with Brianna Doe's office about this?
well,
Now or in the
I can.
past? I'm sort of guessing we have, but I just thought I would ask.
No, it's a great point. I know that I have been, and I will follow up with Vice Chair Harris as well. Both of us seem to share very, very much concern with DOB. I think a lot of people have pointed out on this call, to your point, Christian, there are some issues with the Department of Buildings, and it's unfortunate because I've worked in Manhattan before, and there was never this many issues. And yet here we're in the nation's capital, and we have this many issues. So there has been reach out. I will follow up with you directly as to what I hear back from council member Nato's office. And if that's the only other comment regarding this, let's move on the agenda.
Hold on a second.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make, and I think Joel probably also is wanting to chime in on that. As someone who's lived in the city for a long time, when it was DCRA, it was a boondoggle. So they tried to break it up into less of a boondoggle, and I think they made it even worse.
Yeah, they
because,
doubled the boondoggle.
Yeah, it's just gotten off the chain. This issue has been an ongoing issue for many years. Phil Mendelson has tried to rein in the vacant properties, which are some of these issues relating to DOB. And this is not, and I can tell you for a fact, this is not the first time this has happened, and it's been poo-hooed by DOB. There was a gentleman that was killed up in ANC 1A, where the same exact thing happened, where a wall fell over and crushed him, and nothing ever came out of it. There was a whole lot of community engagement on what are we going to do, where's the outcome, what is the report, whose head is going to roll, and nothing happened. I had an incident on my own block about 5 years ago where a illegal construction project was being done. It was called into DCRA. Nothing was done. No one ever showed up. The guy took out all of the supports, the flooring, and the only thing that was holding the building together was the roof. We had a windstorm come through. The roof collapsed. The wall on the outside, which was abutting an alley, collapsed. The interior wall that he had built for the quote-unquote retaining wall also collapsed. And all of the dirt that was underneath the alley fell into his pit. So when I went out after the storm was over and realized that there was a big hole in the ground, there's trash trucks that come through, DPW trash trucks that come through the alley to pick up the trash behind my house. And there's other vehicles it's a very well-used alley. I had to call and have an emergency closing of the alley because all they needed was to have one truck come through the alley and that truck would have fallen in a big hole. So this is an ongoing issue, and whether or not the representative for Ward 1 on the council is going to do anything or not, I believe there's a hearing tomorrow that Phil Mendelson is doing, and I fully intend to try and at least listen in on it. I'm not going to make comments, but the more, as I've said to Alan on a number of occasions, the greasy wheel gets the action, and if enough people
The squeaky
bark and
wheel.
scream, squeaky wheel, right? You can get it done. You really have to have the willpower and chutzpah to push the issue. I mean, I have another example, which I won't go into a whole lot of detail, where somebody constructed something and I went through DCRA and I contacted 15 different people in the district government, and I worked on it for 2 years and finally got resolution. It was the first time in all the time that I lived here, and I've lived in my house now for almost 35 years. It's the first time I've ever seen the district really knuckle down and do something against an illegal construction person. So it's something we're still looking into. They've promised us that they're going to come next month, and Alan and I have already had a couple of conversations about how we're going to push them to come. We fully intend to have somebody, even if they come and give us a song and dance, we still want them to come and show up because they promised us that they would do it. Go ahead,
Thank
Joe.
you.
I mean, DOB is totally dysfunctional. I mean, they just make it worse. And I wouldn't count on anybody showing up because they will not put themselves on record for anything. And as soon as they get to a public meeting, they're on record. So I wouldn't count on them showing up ever. Anyway, this meeting's dragging.
Well,
So let's go on to the next.
Yeah,
item.
I appreciate that, Joel. And I will, trust me, I will do my best to get them with Patrick. We will do our best to get them to the table. I agree with everything you guys said. We do have a comment from the audience, Mr. Chuck Elkins, which I'm allowing you to talk. So you're unmuted and you could just unmute yourself and bring up whatever you like. Go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Chuck, we can.
I'm Chuck Elkins. I'm ANC Commissioner in 3D01, and I am a squeaky wheel on this issue, as Patrick suggested. And I would ask all of you to be squeaky wheels. This is the year in which we can get this issue fixed. I'm the leadoff witness tomorrow afternoon, probably, on the DOB process. I've been working for the last year with 4 residents who sustained this kind of damage that you saw there at 1111 V Street. Thank goodness in their cases, nobody was killed, but they have sustained several $100,000 of damage to their houses for exactly these same kind of problems. What we have done is we have taken the experiences of these 4 taxpayers who decided they were not going to give in to these builders and they were going to really take them on. We've taken their experiences and produced a report. It's 67 pages long, which is really outrageous, I know, but details really matter in this case because DOB will just tell you they're doing the best they can. Of course, they're not. The reason this is the year to do this and why you need to be squeaky with me, if you would, is that Chairman Bendelson has been concerned about this for some years, as you mentioned. He has a very competent staff member, Blaine Stum, who has taken on the vacant and blighted properties issue. He took on the tenant compliance issue. He has now this year has been assigned by Mendelson to take on this construction permitting problem. This is the time to get Mendelson to appoint a advisory committee, essentially a working group, as he did on vacant and blighted properties, to essentially look into these kind of details. And 1111 B Street is a poster child, excuse me, that's not a very nice way of putting it, is a case that is most present. But there are others as well, of course. And to get enough technical experts in to essentially deal with this issue this year. So although you may not be testifying tomorrow, in my view, is the kickoff to try to get this work group and then try to get some laws passed and some interaction with DOB in a way that can be effective. We've met with DOB over a number of months here and have talked past each other. So I'm sorry that I am squeaky, but I am really asking for your some help, because our report, I think, is a good step toward this, but we need more voices to say, this is the time to stop screwing around with this and get on to solving it. Excuse my language. Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you, Commissioner Elkins, for your dedication to this and also bringing this to your attention. And we like squeaky people around here. It's a good thing. So next up, we're going to actually talk to Mr. Frank Chauvin. Frank, go ahead.
I just wanted to back up what Commissioner Elkins said, and I hope that Commissioner Elkins continues to chat with Commissioner and Chair Kensick here, because I have a problem with ANCs not weighing in enough. But individually, ANCs are overtaxed. But I don't understand why last year, the year before, 5 years ago, there's not an intra-ANC committee to be dealing with these issues, to give great weight that all-encompassing ANCs can do versus one individual ANC yelling at the windmill. I have a similar issue with ABCA and the circumstances that U Street, my home for 33 years, is under because of ABCA's inefficiencies and DOB inefficiencies that they refuse to correct. And I don't understand why it's all sitting on my neighbor's shoulder and my shoulder, and why we don't have a intra-ANC panel to deal with ABCA issues in the same vein. So anyway, I want to know, I hope that Commissioner Elkins continues to convey to Commissioner Kensick how we can all help and be part of the solution here. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that and your hard work. And we do have, I know Commissioner Elkins, your hand is raised again, and I'll give you a second, but David has his hand up as well from the audience. So David, you are allowed to speak. Go ahead and talk.
Yes, Commissioner Kensick, thanks. I'm Dave Maloff. I'm in ANC 2B07 DuPont Circle on Q Street. I had 2 years of maddening experience with a recalcitrant and unwilling to reform DOB. I've worked with Commissioner Elkins, and without getting into details today, many of us are testifying tomorrow. I think the message is clear again to Chairman Mendelson. For the third year, Ms. Bonds has had enough. I think we're at a very opportune point, and all I could say is a bunch of the ANCs piled in regarding the 911 call center. And for what it's worth, Alan, it might be opportune. There's 2 weeks to go here for your ANC to just produce a 4-sentence letter saying something's got to give here, or to join with a few other ANCs. This is a great time to do it, and I'll leave it at that. So I'm not an ANC commissioner. I'm just a ordinary citizen of 43 years here, but I think this could be as opportune as the 911 call center. Thank you.
David, thank you for your comment. And whether you're ANC commissioner or not, it's appreciated. We all work together. We're all doing this as a community together. So I do, that's earmarked, and I will bring it to our next in-person COW meeting. That's before our commissioner meeting, talk about it to the commission and see what we can do. And I'm sure others on this call would love to partake in that as well. So thank you for the comment, David. Chuck is next. Chuck, if you'd like to go ahead and speak, you're off mute. Go ahead.
I'll just be really quick here. Just in terms of how to move forward here. In the case of vacant and blighted properties, they had a work group similar to what we're suggesting. And coming out of that has been both the legislation, but also an ANC caucus, which is the name of a group of that is given to ANCs who cooperate across the district. I'm co-chair of the one on vacant and blighted properties, and we are working hand in glove with DOB. It's a very good working relationship, and I can see us down the road doing the same thing on this issue about I don't know how to describe it, but in a dangerous construction practices that DOB looks the other way on. So I would just plant that idea with those of you who are relating to your ANC, and to say this is a chance maybe to look forward to that kind of caucus, because I think this is a district-wide issue and is certainly not limited to just 1B. Thank you.
Thank you again, Commissioner Elkins. Appreciate it. If we have no further discussion on this matter, we're going to move forward with the agenda.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, Mr. Elkins, thank you so much for bringing up the caucus that is for vacant and blighted properties. We actually on the ANC 1B Economic Development Committee, we actually have one of our representatives, Howard Kurtzman. I'm sure you're familiar with. He has been giving us the great reports and for the great work that you all have been doing, because that listing is extremely important, because we actually made sure that we took an inventory of how many vacant properties that we have in the 1B area. And of course, we were concerned not only that from a public safety point of view, because a lot of those properties, not just in 1B, but across the district, has been utilized for some public safety issues that is of high concern, and the abandonment of these properties is of high concern, because they're intentional in some cases. It's long past COVID. It's people who want to get some type of economic upgrades or benefits from the city, or looking at, like, some people from this new administration hoping that they could get someone to purchase their property for whatever reason, or they're intentionally trying to just degrade the community in which those properties are a part of. And this is intentional, not always through economic hardship. So the questions that we pose to the historic preservation committee members who came, board members who came in this evening, I think is really vital that we stay on top of it, not only from the zoning, but just for the economic viability of this commission. We need to need to make sure that it's clear how much money we are losing when these properties are uncared for, and also how it looks for our neighbors who have to suffer when these properties are neglected and on our streets or next door to us. And there's so many other elements that come into play, not just with the public safety, but also like the rodent issues that we have in our area. So I'm hoping that Mr. Elkins, that you can make sure that your relationship with the Department of Buildings is sound, and that if you look at what's going on in the 1B area, specifically, since you're here in this commission meeting right now, so that we can have some type of, build a relationship with the Department of Buildings, just as you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And I just due to sheer amount of time we have left, we're about an hour and 40 minutes in. We still have a couple items to actually go through too for the agenda. So I'm going to move on now past this point. Commissioner Elkins, thank you for your time. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you doing everything you're doing. Look forward to working with you. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look. The next thing on the agenda is some business, some applicant TDB LLC degree, looking to, I guess there's a hearing date which is still to be determined. I know that
Been pushed to
Commissioner,
next month. He just said that today.
right. Well, I'm just going through the agenda. Thank you, Patrick. I was going to say I'm going to meet with Commissioner Barrio to let him know what's up with that. So if anyone has any questions with that, or if we can move forward, that'd be great. Okay.
Quick question. Alan, so again, this is 1922 9th Street. We're passing here on the agenda, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's I don't want to say.
Alan, let me say this. Frank, we're not passing anything. The issue is at this point, and we can talk a little bit, a few minutes on how we want to move forward on this. The issue is that the applicant, which we spoke to day before
On
yesterday, I
Saturday,
guess, I
yeah.
can't remember when it was, we talked to him, was here, and he's no longer on the meeting, he's dropped off.
Yeah, he was on the meeting for a while. You're right.
Right, so the issue now is that we can look at the drawings that are being proposed, and we can discuss whether or not we want to weigh in on it, and have the ANC make comments. But if we don't do that something tonight, then we're not going to get it in front of the commission for next month. They were supposed to be, they're on the agenda for this month, for the 27th, this week. And we were able to persuade Steve to move it to next month, which he graciously did. He didn't have to. But now that this guy has not shown up or left before we even got a chance to ask him any questions, I don't know, to be honest with you, that where we can go with this other than for us as a committee to look at the drawings and point out issues like Frank's box in the back, which is a comment we can certainly send into the commission, and figure out those things. I will say, just as an aside, as Steve explained, this is just for them to look at and approve their concept. It's not a done deal. And I can already tell you, and I'm sure Joel can concur, that there are some zoning issues that we are backing up against here. So that means that even if HBRB was to approve their conceptual design, that once they get in front of DLB, they're going to get bounced back to have to go in front of BZA. I can tell you that for a fact. So then we'll get another bite at the apple. And that is also a chance for the design change to happen. You can request that at BZA, but I think we should at least at the bare minimum look at the design, the drawings that he sent. And I understand from reading the comments in the meal that some of you guys are having trouble with the link that we put in. I will personally apologize, since this is my first time trying to use a link in that format. We tried it and it worked fine. We probably should have put an additional note in the agenda that said if you click the link and it doesn't work, just copy it and paste it into the thing, because it will work. And maybe I should have put some instructions. I just assumed that most people would understand how to get it to work, and or are much more savvy than I am, to be honest with you. But that said, I have the drawings, see here. Here.
Christian just put it in the chat as well. So you can click on the link
Right.
in the chat.
Right. So I can bring it up on the screen.
Hey, Patrick, while you're pulling that up, I was wondering if we could hear from committee member Alex Smith, who is the contiguous backside neighbor here, and his overall thoughts. Because, first of all, the application that is part of in the Dropbox set of documents filed with HPO includes an application that says they checked in with their neighbors. And unfortunately, I don't know whether that's a big lie, a little lie, an omission. I'm not certain,
Well,
but Alex,
yeah.
I don't think they checked in with you or any of your neighbors. Am I correct?
Excuse me 1 second. I will say this real quick, and that's a great point, Frank. When I spoke to them about our reservation on this, there was two components. One of them was there was a lack of transparency, which, you know, I always push like I did with 1617 U Street to getting out to the community. And the other one was that the guy that was on the call, who is the architect, basically said he wasn't really ready. So that's another reason why we were able to get it pushed back longer. So there is supposed to be an outreach to the community, and that's a great point that you bring up, and I'm glad you're bringing it up. I'm now seeing the drawings, Patrick, you're pulling up, and Alex, if you have something you'd like to add, by all means, please do.
Thank you, Frank. I do think, yeah, so, and I checked in with a couple of my other neighbors too, to hear if they had had community engagement. And I'm just wondering if this or some future venue is the appropriate time to bring up, because I know a lot of my neighbors have some pretty serious concerns just because of how close this commercial building is to the residential buildings, like directly abutting them, and both about noise, light pollution, but then also the historic character.
So Alex, I will say, I'll zero around again to my point that just in my experience and looking at what's here, I see that there's going to be some issues with zoning, and he's gonna have to ask. He's going to at least have to go in front of zoning for certain things, and without all I have is what's in front of me that I have on the screen. That's all that's been put into the box. So without looking at a plat and without looking at some other things that I can determine what's going on, there's going to be issues that he's going to have to go in front of zoning, the Board of Zoning Adjustment to get answered, and that's the opportunity that we have to address specifics to that. I will say that Steve's comment about what Frank brought up about the rear of it being a shed, and the fact that there's only one window makes a little bit of sense in the fact that if they're using it as a restaurant and it's got noise, that will help versus having a whole bunch of windows. I'm of the mindset that Frank made, that it kind of just doesn't fit right to have a big blank wall back there. So those are issues that will come out, but those are issues that can be made to HBRB as comments from the ANC about closeness to the abutting neighbors, the fact that it's a solid wall, all of those things. So those are things that should be addressed.
Christian, Alan?
Go ahead, Frank.
Or Frank, do you want to go first? I don't.
Yeah, no, Christian, you go ahead. I've been.
Yeah,
planning
I
on
just was.
voice.
I think I was just going to say I think it might be helpful, and I'm happy to do this, but I have not really have looked extensively through these plans, so I might not be the best person to do this. But I do think it would be helpful for some of our newer members if we could just take a moment to really just objectively describe what the application is proposing, instead of not necessarily what we think about it, just because I know, speaking from experience, that it can be really difficult to read building plans and sort of understand what's happening. And I find the narrative that they submitted to be pretty insufficient in describing what is actually going to be happening here. So I think if there's somebody who's familiar with what had the chance to really read through everything, I think it might be helpful if they could just give a really sort of bullet point summary.
Do you want me to jump in here?
Please, Joel, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay. It's an existing, basically townhouse. I'm not sure what the existing use is right now, but they're doing what is a lot of people do, is they're taking down the rear wall and extending the property back. This is an Arts 2 zoning area. So they're not constrained by lot occupancy. They're constrained by FAR. The FAR allowable is 1.5, and from their table, they're proposing, I think, 0.92. So they're okay with that. They're within height, they're okay.
The only thing I can't tell where they might be not in compliance by right is the rear setback. They don't have any kind of a lot plat or a survey or anything that shows the rear property line.
Yep.
And they're required to have a 15-foot rear setback. So that's not shown. Otherwise, you know, everything they're doing is by right. So, you know, the comments on building codes kind of thing is kind of mute. The only restriction they have is historic. And since the side walls are blanked because they're tied up against the other buildings, the only comment we really have is on the rear. And I will agree, it's not pretty. But what they're doing is by right, and HPO generally does give great latitude to the rear. That's kind of why their staff report is saying this is compatible. And Steve's justification of trying to keep openings to a minimum for noise is some kind of a justification. Aesthetically, it's terrible, yes. But that's the kind of the underlying what we have to do. And comments really, for the purposes of HPO review, are just that rear facade and what might be done with it. Looking at the floor plans, the first floor, there's that door, and then on the other side of the rest of the building, it's their kitchen. And then for the second floor, that window is in a lounge area, and then on the side of it there, it's a woman's restroom. So the options are really kind of limited for windows. You could do a high clear story type window, but without redoing the floor plans, it is rather awkward to put a window into the woman's restroom and into the stove of a commercial kitchen. And then I'll just leave it at that, because I'm going to stay neutral on this as far as making any comments or recommendations.
Thank you, Joel, for bringing that the cliff notes on that, and Vice Chair Brandt, appreciate you also asking the question. I've been reading blueprints 28 years, and you're right. For a normal person looking at them, it looks like just a whole bunch of lines. So I really do appreciate that. Frank, I want to give you the floor. You had your hand raised. Please go ahead. Frank, you're on mute. Frank, you're on mute.
Yeah, I appreciate trying to look at this methodically, but from the outset, we have two issues to look at. Nothing is before us to look at building zoning, all right, and that application, whether it's to the BZA for a waiver, we're not doing that tonight. That application isn't before us. The only application that's before us is for historic preservation. So on that ground, I would just say we vote to dispense with this on two grounds. That no data has, no community outreach has been conducted. I think that's, and the applicant was deceitful in saying he completed it. So if we approve a dispensation and ask them to come back because they left the meeting, did not review this with us. We can't ask these questions. No community outreach has been done in the neighborhood, according to the backside neighbor, that we just dispense with this and ask them to come back and ask the ANC to, this is a recommendation, the ANC, we dispense with it on the grounds of no community outreach and confusing applications saying that they completed the outreach.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in about this community outreach on their application. They have checked no, that they have not talked to the ANC and that they have not met with any others. They did check no on both of those items.
But also though, to Frank, to your point,
they did say they did share information with abutting neighbors, but abutting means side by side, not necessarily rear, because there's the alley between. So technically, it fits.
Alex,
but I just wanted to say that.
Joel, there is no back alley. So an abutting neighbor is Alex on this call. He's the backside. There's no alley. There's only contiguous property line that they share.
I'm sorry, you're right. I'm looking at the zoning. I'm sorry, you're right. There is no alley there.
And both neighbors have articulated they did not hear from him, so no outreach is done, though he's confirmed in writing with his signature that outreach has been done.
And that's a great point. I'd like to bring up also, when we had asked Steve Colcutt to come on the call and we brought this up as a concern, right away within, I don't know, an hour, I get a call from the architect. So before I even had a chance to reach out to the architect, so this shows you a little bit how this city works. And like I said, he was on the call, he dropped off. I think when I spoke to him on Saturday, he said that that they're not done. There's still some preparation with the drawings they need to do. They didn't meet all requirements yet, but I think to what you're saying, Frank, makes absolute sense, and understanding that's duly noted as well. There was another hand up, but put their hand down. I'm not sure if they still had something or if they like to talk.
I think
Well,
that was me. I just took it down.
I'm wondering though, Alan, on a motion to table this for those reasons. And Christian, what do you think here? I see your ears are, interested. I'd like to motion that we recommend to the full commission that this application be tabled before the HPO until the applicant comes to meet with the ZPD and be vetted, and absolutely conducts outreach, which has not been conducted to the neighbors.
Frank, just as a point, may I kind of go through?
Sure.
Say something. The ANC can't really say that to the board.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah, they can kind of request a postponement. I mean, if you really want to object, I mean, what we have here is we could deny it and have a negative recommendation to the HPRB, and that would usually be enough for the applicant then to be sent back here, or for Steve to recommend that it's postponed again.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Joel took the words right out of my mouth.
I think that's really the only course of action that the ANC has at this point.
Well, if you could motion that, I'd love to second it if anybody else is interested.
Well, first, Frank, if you can, if that's the case, can you take off your original motion, and then if someone else wants to
make a motion. He said he would like to make a motion. He didn't physically make a motion.
All right. Somebody just make a motion then if they want to deny it.
Before we do the motion, can I just ask one clarifying question? Are we running the risk of not, like, if we don't provide any I guess my question is, like, are we running the risk of missing the opportunity to provide feedback to the ANC on this so that they can provide feedback to the HPRB? Or I think I maybe am getting the dates and the timeline of this confused, or I'm sort of having misordered. So I just want to make sure we're not risking
Christian,
sort of missing the opportunity to provide feedback.
If we don't do something tonight, that is what Joel was suggesting, and I was going to suggest. We need to let them know that the ANC is not happy with what's transpired and is not going to support it. Then from my experience, and Joel can speak to this too, usually when that happens, when the ANC sends in a negative, the board will tend to say, you need to go back and do some more work and then come back to us. And that will guarantee us that we'll get a second bite at the apple again on this one, because if we don't do anything tonight, he's already said that he's postponed it to next month. And then we're not going to have enough time to go through and get the proper ANC official vote, which is what we really need. The committee can make only a recommendation. It doesn't actually have the authority to make it permanent. The commission has to take and either accept our recommendation or make their own.
Great, thank you.
I'll just step in that if there is no recommendation from the ANC, then it's assumed to be they have no comments and not objecting to it from the HPRB's point of view.
100%. That's correct.
Simon?
Thank you. And so I know I'm new here, and I understand that we have a lot of strong passions about this project, but I would just like to take a moment and kind of speak on its behalf, just based off what I've seen tonight and going through this part of the city. I think that allowing a business to expand and add essentially what, 2 rooms, an industrial kitchen and a bathroom and a lounge. I understand that we're not happy that they didn't contact all the budding neighbors. I understand that we're not happy that it doesn't have the amount of windows that we would like or the siding that we would like. But at the end of the day, this by sending this back to the ANC, we could potentially be postponing the ability of this business to expand. And I know that we were just talking about the backlog. We were just talking about the number of abandoned construction projects. I really think if they're ready to go, what, I guess my question is like, what is the cost benefit analysis here? To throw up another roadblock in this person's effort to expand their business.
Simon, if I may, sorry, Joel, give me 1 second. If I may, it's not really as much as a roadblock. It's covering the commission and making sure that the due process is met. The part of the process is that they need to talk to neighbors. That's part of the process. So I love your point, and I actually love the balance that we're going here. Like we're both talking on both sides, which is great. But once we give up, to Patrick's point and to Joel's point earlier, once we give up and we pass this, then basically we're like nodding, like, yeah, it's great. But then also ultimately, I don't know where exactly you live, Simon, but I know I don't live right there, and I don't know how I'd feel having, as Frank said, a barn or a shed being put in and extended. So there is more involved in this, and that's just a quick summation. I'm sorry if anyone else would like to speak. Go ahead.
I'd just like to say about on the timing issues. They haven't, if they don't have plans ready to show us, are not close to having plans ready for submitting a building permit. A building permit for something like this will take 6 weeks to get a first round review, and I can guarantee there will be comments on it, which then takes that back that there's going to be another at minimum 2 weeks review. So they're looking at 2 months out anyway. So just for the way the process works, just to let you know.
Joel, I really appreciate the context. Thank you. There's a couple of hands in the audience. We're going to see if we could please hear from Nayani Hong next, please, only because he has not spoken that much tonight, and not that anyone else has, but we'll go back in order with Alex and then Vice Chair Brandt. Go ahead.
Thanks. I appreciate it, Commissioner Kensick. I'm just curious so I did a little bit of sleuthing, and I don't live particularly in this area. I went on Google Maps. I went on the street view to the back. I'm just curious. I couldn't see this from the back. I don't know exactly how it shows up. I'm just curious if anyone, Mr. Smith, you live near this area. I'm just curious exactly what it looks like, because I couldn't even really, see where it would be. It seems like there are other row homes that would be blocking that path. So I would like a little bit, just to, if like they've mentioned, if the back, the people who are mostly seeing it are just the neighbors, I think that would be, I think, unfortunate and a little bit, unfortunate to them. But I'm not sure how that works with, the historic preservation piece. Thanks.
Thank you for the comment. We do have a comment or question or comment in the audience in terms of the attendees. I don't know if Alex, you want to go first and then Vice Chair Brandt, or if we want to let Mr. Franklin speak for a second. You guys okay with that? Okay. Frank, I'm going to take you off so you can now unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Great. No, I know it's been a long night, so I appreciate everyone's attention to this issue. Also, one of the neighbors on 9.5 Street, I want to raise a few issues, but at least I can respond to the committee member's last question about what it looks like now. it looks like the back of a row home. There's some space and a pretty lovely tree that's back there right now, that I think is pretty old. The tree itself, I think, like rises almost as tall as the row home right now. The way that the row homes on 9.5 Street look, they all there's kind of an open space between the row homes, and that comprises all the backyards, and so you can all the neighbors on 9.5 Street would be able to see this. So that's what it looks like. I just want to raise three thoughts, just as one of the neighbors who lives here. The first is one that you all have mentioned. It's a procedural one. It really did not seem like there was any sort of notice given to the neighbors or to the neighborhood about this expansion. And so that, I think this process point is something that is really important here. And I would be disappointed if we were to reward violations of that process. I don't think it's just like a simple. I don't think we should turn a blind eye to that, because this is how the neighborhood weighs in on this, and so to skirt that that notice requirement, I think was disappointing to me. The second one is a substantive one. I'm concerned that there's a lower standard here because it is a business. All the structures here should adhere to the same historic standards, regardless of if it's a home or if it's a business. I think there's been conversation, or there have been comments about, oh, we should just, if a business wants to expand, we should allow that to happen. I'm not aware that there actually is a current business in that place. When I went on Google Maps, there's nothing listed for 1922. I looked to see if there is an existing alcohol license or even an application for an alcohol license. It doesn't even look like there's an existing alcohol license. So I'm not sure if it's an existing restaurant, but I have not been able to determine that it actually is.
Hey, Frank, if I could just inject, there was an illegal pot shop operating on the first floor for 4 years. They were shut down by the police with all of their stuff confiscated several occasions. And in the first floor, there was a brow shop, the eyebrow shop, a woman's eyebrow shop. And neither of them are operating. It's been vacant for about 6 months or more.
Thank you for that background. Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't seem like this is like an example of like a thriving restaurant that is just looking to expand. So I think it's important to clarify the record there. And the third point I just wanted to make was, it does not sound like there's enough for this committee to make an actual determination here. I recognize that this meeting has been long. I'm glad that they sent a representative to discuss this, but I've been waiting hours for this to be brought up. It would have been great if the applicant could have also devoted time to be here to talk about this. And so it just doesn't seem like there's enough to make a determination about whether or not this would actually comply with the historic standards. Looking at this application, I too had similar concerns of other individuals on this committee as to whether or not this application actually sets forth what this would actually look like. And so that I was looking forward to an opportunity to discuss with the applicant what their plans were in terms of making sure that this is historically sound and consistent with the rest of the neighborhood, but that did not happen. So those are just the 3 points. Want to thank everyone on the committee for their service to ensuring historic preservation. So thank you.
Frank, thank you for the comment. Really well appreciated. And I will tell you, one thing I love about DC is the history, and we're going to definitely preserve the most we can for it. I would ask Mr. Nelson if you could please take off your screen the set of drawings, please. And I'm going to ask kindly Alex and Vice Chair Brandt to give me 1 second to let Ms. Karen speak, who we have not heard from tonight. Thank you, guys. Ms. Karen, you're all set.
Hi, yeah, I don't want to take up any more time. I realize it's been a really long meeting, and hi everyone, I'm new. Just, I don't know, for whatever it's worth, Google Maps sleuthing, having spent time on that corridor, I go to DC9 a lot. It looks like the other businesses that are right next to it, it's also a lot of like lounge type places, which this place looks like it's putting a permit in for. And they also have their lots that go almost back to the property line. So not something we can get to this meeting, but I'd be interested in, obviously lots of other businesses have been able to be zoned to have that same type of structure and for the same type of business. So I don't know what it looks like from behind on 9.5
Well-
Street for all those other businesses, but it looks like they're trying to just do something similar to what the other neighboring businesses have done, which
Karen with the Y, I appreciate that. No, the input, that's great. And I will say, Karen with the E, you sent a couple messages about can we pull up the Google View Maps? I believe someone said earlier, I think it was Frank Lynn, who's Frank, last name Lynn, said that we couldn't. I don't think that there is actual Google Map we can, Karen. I can try looking for one right now, or if Vice Chair Brandt.
If you try to Street View, it should come up via Street View.
See what I can find.
Yes,
Here,
all you have to do is just go on and just do a street view of that area.
yeah, I think what committee member Gall is asking is just for the street facing one, because we obviously don't, there's no back alley, so we don't have a view of the unless we can see that from 9.5 Street, but I wasn't able to kind of pick that
You
up.
can. I can pull it up if you want. If you guys are okay with that.
I just did.
Oh, perfect. There we go.
So I think this is the 9.5 Street, and this still isn't the alley, or there is no alley, but this isn't the space between.
You should be able to
1922.
rotate that, so you should be able to see it with that little rotate button down there.
Where are we rotating? Left, right? I mean,
Keep going.
This way.
That's as far as it goes?
Yeah, I'm literally using my you want to try to go down I don't know, that's not gonna happen. Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna drop this off on someone else who
I was just gonna say that you can almost peek in, but you can't quite because it's a few homes over. But it's basically the homes from 9.5 and 9th Street abut each other in the back.
All right, so I'm gonna allow someone else to share, so this way they can because I got this new computer and like my finger, it's as you guys just witnessed.
Yeah.
So if someone else wants to share,
I just screenshotted a Google Earth picture of it, but I don't know how to upload it. Is there something you can tell me how to do that?
at the bottom of your screen, Joel, in the center, like next to the raise hand button, it says share. And then when you click on that, it'll typically bring you to like show what you want to share, and it should be able to click on that what you want to share, and it should come up to the screen. If that
I don't have a share. It has the raised hand, then chat, and then Q&A. Let me see what's more. Yeah,
see
it
if I
doesn't.
Let me see if I
Oh,
can.
here I just found the share. Okay.
Okay, cool.
It was under the more type thing.
Well, just bring it up on your computer, Joel.
Well,
and
I just here. How's that?
Joel, you're the man. This is perfect.
Okay.
I mean,
Now
that's
it's
perfect.
very fuzzy because I had to blow it up, but that's the Google Earth shot of it.
I mean, I have pretty good vision. To me, that looks like a very, very hard distinction to see.
It's where the red dot is. That's 1922. You'll see it's currently not as far back as all the others. But I'm assuming that they would propose going back as far as their adjacent properties. So it does put it pretty close to the rear line of the other 9th Street, 9.5 Street, I guess.
Yeah, very close. All right, so now if it's okay, Joel, keep that up, please, if you don't mind. Alex, you've been very patient, but Alex, please go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm happy to wait if Christian, if you have more comments. But I was just going to try and make a motion based on the conversation that we were having earlier about kind of rejecting the proposal as is, with the hopes of, not in the hopes of squashing business on 9th Street, because I think myself and many of my neighbors moved to this area because of the like thriving community, both residential and commercial here, but in the hopes of being able to start conversation with the business owner and having the business owner reach out to the neighbors. So I'm not sure quite how to formally put that motion out there.
Alex, I'm gonna commend you for being first on a committee and trying to stab at that. But I'm gonna take a point of order here and defer to Joel to let him do it so that you can hear from him how you officially make a motion in this committee, because you have to say certain things so that it's documented correctly. I hope I'm not offending you, but I commend you for being new to this committee and wanting to take a stab at it.
Point
So,
of order
Mr. Joe,
acknowledged.
I will turn it over to you to take your seniority. I'm deferring mine to you to let you make the official motion, please.
Point of order acknowledged.
And thank you, Chair, for recognizing a point of order.
Thank you, Commissioner Chauvin. Please, Joe, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, okay, let me think for a second because I was going to stay out of this. Do you want to take
Not
this
so
down?
easy.
Yeah. Why don't you just go away, old man, huh? Isn't it time for you to retire?
No, it's definitely not. You bring vast a lot of knowledge, and it's appreciated.
No,
If you,
I'm teasing him. I'm trying to take this down. How do I do that?
Just it should have a little thing on
there
your
we go.
screen that
There's
says
stop share. There we go.
Yeah.
Right.
Got it.
You're already a professional. Look at you.
Yeah, I'm just an old man that's not that tech savvy on an iPad. No, that's not true. Okay. So, well, an ended discussion. Okay. I'll take the nod of the head as a yes, and you're ready to call for a motion. Yes. Okay. Okay. Let me think how I want to word this. I move that the ZPD committee make a recommendation to the full ANC to send a letter to the HPRB recommending disapproval of the applicant at 1922 9th Street for the extension of the existing structure, with the reasons being defined the rear elevation not compatible with the historic district guidelines and the lack of community involvement and notifications provided to the neighbors.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been second. So let's
So we have a motion that's been properly moved and seconded.
And
Any
now is there
discussion?
any discussion points? That's correct. Yep.
No
Being that
discussion?
I don't see any, let's take a vote. So I'm going to go through and just please, actually, when we're raising our hands, is that what we're doing, or how are we doing this? What's the easiest way for everyone?
Those in favor, please raise your hand. And
Well, there's
can use her
people that
yellow
aren't
hand.
on, so it's probably going to be better to do a voice call.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
so.
I'm looking at 3 people that don't have 4 people that aren't visible. So a voice roll call. There we go. And this is my personal thing, is this is among ourselves. There's nobody here, but personally, and this is also comes from me being on the other side of these committees. When you take a vote, it's nice to see the people that are actually voting.
I already made that point to Alan. She just hasn't said it yet. So good for you.
Now I know Karen has technical problems with not being able to get in, but I think it's very rude. These are public meetings. We should be able to show our faces, if not for the discussions, at least when there's the vote taken.
Right.
So that's just a personal opinion on this.
Joel, I agree. I agree. And Patrick did give me the notice. That was one of my to-dos in the beginning. I can't rewind. So, but yeah, that's a great point, only because of the integrity and of what we're voting and what we're presenting back to the full committee. I think that makes sense. For those that do have technical difficulties, we'll do our best to work with that as well. But if you can, just for the vote, put your camera on to say yes or no, that would be great. So everyone in favor of this motion, which was well put by Joel. Thank you, Joel. Please raise your hand. Okay, and anyone who is opposed to this, please raise your hand. Alec, okay. Okay, well, the ayes have it with 6. Some people not voting.
If you want to add in this, yeah, if you
I
want
was
to add,
gonna
call
say,
for abstentions.
any abstentions?
Fair
Abstention.
enough. Sorry. Okay.
So
Yes, we
2
have.
abstentions.
Okay, got it. It's 2. So
Chair,
I had.
Chair, we have the option of using our Zoom hand also, which
Yes,
allows you to do
you
a
said
really
that, Karen.
good proper count of the vote easily by just looking at the participant list. And that's much more effective as well. I'm just to let you know that whether someone has their camera on or off, you do have that option.
Well, no, I still think it's important when possible to have the camera on to see who it is.
Yes, I mean
And
it's also good, Joe. It's not.
yeah, no, what you're saying is perfect too, as far as actually seeing, because I couldn't really tell on the yeses who had their hands raised or not. So yes, I agree with your point.
That's right. That's the only reason why I said it, because I think even though you said it, people came off camera and went on camera really fast, and it's probably harder to record it. And if they maintain their hand up for you to count the vote properly, it allows you to see it. I mean, that's my suggestion.
Karen, that's a great point. Thank you for that. I have Daniel Kramer hand up. I just want to say though, what I officially tallied was 6 yeas, 0 nays, and 2 abstentions, which is 8. I'm not voting, either is Patrick. So that's leaving someone out, and I'm not sure, but that's, to your point, Karen, a great point, because when I'm counting this and
Right.
some,
That's
I
right.
thought I
1,
thought
2,
I
3,
did see
4,
1 nay.
5, 6, 7, 8. That's right. 6 and 2 is 8. There's 8
yeah.
people.
Okay.
Oh, 6 and 2 is 8. I didn't know. Thank you.
So I just
Hey,
wanted to
in
make
this environment, we don't know anymore. Okay.
Okay, Daniel, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make a point. First of all, I'm sorry that I had my microphone whatever on earlier, but I own and operate restaurants. These meetings are not, I know it's a reality, they're not timed to my work schedule. But if I was on video the whole time, and I can't be on this call, I can't be on video on this call. I'm trying to participate, and hopefully advance public safety concerns in Ward 1 and our ANC and across the city. But asking people who are either at work or dealing with family, kids, or other life, things at this time can be a tall ask. And I just want to be, I would ask that other people be sensitive to different people's work and other life schedules. So that
I
would be
think
my thing.
I think that's a great point. And to Karen's point as well, again, I'm not trying to, I think what the point was they were trying to say is that just for the vote. But again, you know what, I think as to Karen's point and what's already been discussed, we can raise hands then, just keep the hands up until I finish the count and then we'll do it. So whatever you feel more comfortable with, we're not expecting everyone to stay on their phone calls and live and all that good stuff. But any other comments or questions? Daniel, your hand's still up. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, I don't. Thank you. Sorry.
No. Don't be sorry. Thank you. I appreciate it. Karen with a Y, I wanted to make sure that I fully got back to everything you had brought up earlier. If there was anything else you wanted to add to your point.
No, I'm good.
Okay. So now that we have the total tally, I think that we can go back to the commission with what we are saying. I hope that satisfies the committee here. And I'd like to move on if that's possible. Okay, without objection, we're going to go next to the next line item, which is to inform the committee of Howard University's notice of intent to file an application with the District of Columbia Zoning Commission to amend Howard University's Central Campus Plan pursuant to Subtitle X, Section 101.10 of the 2016 zoning regulations. On behalf of Howard University, we are preparing an application to be submitted to the DC Zoning Commission to amend. I don't have to read the rest of this to you guys. You can read it. I think this is, again, something that Patrick and I looked at this weekend, and we said we could bring this up for further discussion. We just thought we'd put it on the radar for everyone to be aware of it. If anyone has any questions or if we can move on, we can move on.
I don't have questions, but I want to give it a little bit more details on what you did, if that's okay.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Thank you.
This is part of another educational thing for the new members of the committee. And one that I stressed with Alan, that when things go through the zoning commission or the BZA or HBRB, as Steve was explaining, there's notices sent out and multiple notices go for different things. This is just a letter that was sent to me by the legal person at Howard, informing me that they're going to file with the zoning commission for an amendment to the plan. The campus, every single campus that's within the District of Columbia has to file every 10 years what's called a campus plan. And it details all of the activities that happen within the campus boundaries, all the buildings, what they're designated for, what their use is for. It goes into parking, it goes into traffic control. I mean, it's a huge, thick document that every campus has to do. When a university is doing something within the campus plan that requires a change to the plan, i.e., if they put in the plan that they're going to build a building, they have to go to the zoning commission and have it looked at, kind of given a blessing on. If the campus plan is being changed in any shape, form, or fashion, they also have to go to the zoning commission. So this is, without going into a whole lot of history, because I could probably bore you guys silly, this is a section of the campus that the university is going to remove from the campus plan and redevelop into some other uses than what's on the campus. So they're just notifying the ANC that they're doing this. We will get an official notification that they've filed, and then they will have to, at some time, hopefully within the next month or two, they will come before this committee and make a full presentation of what their plan is for what they're doing to remove the plant, to remove this parcel from the plan. They've already done a presentation to what's commonly known as the CAC within the university, and that's community members, ANC commissioners, a number of different people that are on that committee. They are going tomorrow evening to the LeDroit Park Civic Association to make a presentation, which will be the exact same one that they made to the CAC. And then they will come here either next month, depending on their schedule, or the month after, to do the exact same thing here. So I know that's a whole lot, and it's probably more than you guys can understand at this point in the time, since we've been going on for this meeting quite a bit. But it's just, I just wanted to kind of give you guys the heads up that this is going to be coming in front of us at some point in time, and the ANC will have to make a recommendation to either support or not support, or ask the university to do something different than what it's planning, or whatever the case may be.
Hey,
Are there-
Patrick. No, I wanted to tell you actually, Karen with a Y actually said that that's helpful context. So it is appreciated very much so. It's appreciated by me there as well. So I would think that anyone that, whether how long we're going, I just want to make it clear, this committee is not about timing people and rushing people. If we have to be on for whatever business, we're going to handle it. And in this, especially being our first meeting, and I love what Joel, yourself, everyone in this, Frank, everyone in the community, Karen, who's added input. I think it's helped a lot of the new members. I do want to also recognize Bruce Flippins actually sent me a message earlier. I just wanted to say that he's in California and got mixed up with times, so he will be a part of the next meeting, just as an FYI. And to Patrick's point, he was just about to ask a question. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Patrick. If anyone had any other questions in regards to what Patrick just discussed, please raise your hand or speak freely. I'll take that as a no. Okay. So
no questions.
I think everyone is kind of half sleeping now, and I'm just kidding. All right. So the next thing is any new business, any other business that anyone like to discuss or bring up or recommend. Here is the space to do so. Frank, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I've spoken a lot tonight, so I'll keep this short. But 5 years ago, I joined this committee on one premise, and that has to do with the arts overlay and its implementation, its use or misuse, as I should say. And for the next minute, I'd just like to give a quick background. 1989. The arts overlay uptown amendments were approved for the bringing back U Street, 14th Street, and a few of the side streets, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and 13th, a block or two south of U Street and north of U Street, depending on the area. But there were 33 by right uses in this arts overlay. Does arts overlay say to you nightlife district? One of the 33 uses, eating, drinking. That's one of the 33 uses have become the predominant use, and it's become a problem. It's not managed well. We don't have an authority to manage it. I know we're working on bid and neighborhood management authority to help manage, but we've been ignored for 36 years. And I sit on this committee, and as I said 6 years ago, to be involved in the debate regarding the arts overlay and to make sure it's implemented, reviewed, corrected for the deformed present state it's in. U Street has been on a downward cycle for 10 years, and the city walked away in 1989, went to the Wharf, went to Navy Yard, went to Noma, and went to Union Market. And they said they forgot about U Street because nobody forced them to be at the table. Nobody forced them to make the proper investments. And we're in the condition we're at. So I am here partially, and as the impetus 6 years ago, to review and look at that overlay, and I hope this continues to be a place we can do that. And I think next meeting we might have some comments on that more, and I will work with Patrick and Alan to ensure that we continue this conversation and get moving, because we've gone in circles for the last 6 years on this issue. And one of those items will be brought to the table, I think, next month regarding the 50% cap of eating and drinking uses on U Street facing lots and on 14th facing lots per the arts overlay. But thank you.
Yeah, and Frank, that's a great point, because as I've gotten more and more into this and learning more, Patrick actually surmised it to almost cliff note points to me. So maybe for some of the people that are new on, we can give a quick summation of what the arts overlay is and what it was intended for. Patrick, if you or Joel can speak on that, that'd be great.
I don't particularly want to, but I guess I will.
Yeah, the only I have a question, Frank. I thought we hit the 50% years ago. It's not?
Well, 89 and 90, that's correct. Let me just give you that quick history.
Yeah.
In 1989, the amendments were approved. All right. There was no cap on U Street or 14th Street. A year and a half later, they instituted 25% cap, U Street, 14th Street facing lots only. However, the district being the district, us being volunteers, didn't force the district to manage that 25% cap. So guess what? 17 years later, nobody's managing the cap, and the cap had moved to 50% because that was, people were doing whatever they wanted because there was no management.
Well, the district never established a definition of footage and frontage. So that didn't help at all.
That's correct. Part of the problem.
But it does have, and this is one of the dilemmas we have, is that they have, first of all, they put blocks and what was allowed on a block, but then they didn't include every single block that they should have included. They left all of 9th Street off. They left part of 7th Street off. And
this is why I wasn't going to answer this, because there's a history that'll take another hour. And Patrick is not known for his concise summaries.
Well, what I was gonna say is that Frank and I have had multiple conversations on this along this, and he has graciously volunteered to try and contact somebody in zoning to come and talk to us. I've been able to dig up some information that I passed on to Frank that gives us a little bit of meat to talk about.
If you thought DOB is a mess, zoning is worse.
Right. We got HPO to come tonight, and we didn't want to have too much. We So we're looking at trying to get somebody from zoning, and maybe next month and maybe a couple of months from now, we're trying to push that as hard as we can. And in the meantime, still working on some of the issues that because there's some overlap that we're dealing with between zoning and Abra on one case in particular, which I wouldn't even bring that up because that'll get too contentious.
922.
And not 922.
9/11. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that
We'll
one's
just
going a
leave it
little
at
bit.
this point that our goal is to get somebody to come and talk to us about it, and Frank and I have actually tried to even get a meeting to talk to them face to face to address some specific issues on it.
Okay, well, that's great. I like that because I have some issues with it. Although I'm just stating whatever. All right. Anyone else have any questions or comments they like to add? Well, I will say, I really appreciate everyone's time. All of you guys are doing this on your own time, and I know it's not easy. We all have jobs. We all are working, but it shows how much like a community can get together and really work together to try to do what's best for our city, which we love. So I open any ideas that you guys have in the future for any future speakers you'd like to hear from. We are going to try to be bringing zoning to the table. I'm sorry. We are going to bring zoning to the table. We are going to bring DOB to the table. We're going to make ZPD the committee it should be and hold the DC and the appropriate parties accountable for the mess we're kindly put in right now. So we're going to try to work on some of this, and we're going to work on some of it. So I'm glad to have you all. If there's any other questions or comments at this time, please let me know. I don't see any in the audience, any of the panel members.
Next meeting.
Thanks. Thanks, Frank. Let me just pull up my calendar
Alex,
we have the
you
17th.
need to officially end the meeting, adjourn the meeting.
I know. The next meeting is going to be on the 17th of March. Do want to let you know that we're on the third Monday of each month. So just keep that in mind, 6:30 p.m. With that being said, see you on the 17th.
Hold on. Is that the holiday?
It's St. Patrick's Day.
That's a problem with government officials. They won't show up on a holiday. So
Well, we haven't even confirmed that anyone will come. So,
well, I think
it can be
by
moved.
definition they don't work on holidays. They're not coming in.
Okay.
Well, if we can't, I would say, I mean, it's up to the chair to make that decision, but whether he wants to bounce it automatically.
Yeah, you know what? Listen, what I would say if it's looked at as a government holiday, and I'm not positive. I've worked with the government. I know they got every day off. It seemed when I did for the 2 years. So I wouldn't be surprised St. Patrick's Day being a holiday as well. Maybe it would be smart moving it to the fourth Monday, just in the sake of making sure that we bring these parties
Push it to
accountable.
Tuesday. That's what we
It's not a federal holiday. Thanks, Karen.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's great news. Okay. So we're going to keep it the 17th. And just so you know, we can't really just switch days of the week. The 1B channel only has a certain amount of zoning time. I know that sounds weird. So with all the other committees, when they get bounced, as you saw with Commissioner Barrios safety, they did it on teams. That's not the normal MO, what we want to do. So it's hard just to bounce it a day or two. But we're going to keep it then at the 17th. Thank you, Karen with the Y. I appreciate it. And I'm going to adjourn this meeting now at 9:13 p.m. Thank you all for coming, and I will see you soon.